Check this out.
Oh!
That's another 40.04.
432.17 ounces.
Rick Ness broke down in shock after uncovering a forgotten machine buried deep in the wilderness, only to find it overflowing with gold worth over $500 million. This isn't some myth or exaggerated tale. It's a discovery so massive, so unexpected, it's sending shockwaves through the entire mining industry. Imagine standing face to face with a rusted relic, long abandoned, only to realize it holds a fortune that could change everything. Rick's emotional breakdown wasn't just about the money. It was about uncovering a secret no one thought still existed. A secret that could rewrite history, disrupt powerful players, and ignite a global treasure hunt. But with that fortune comes danger. Rivals are watching, shadows are lurking, and the race to control this buried gold is on. Want to see the moment Rick's world flipped upside down? To witness the machine that's rewriting mining rules? Hit like, smash, subscribe. Let's jump straight into the discovery that's breaking the internet. Rick Ness wasn't even supposed to be there. He was chasing a weird soil anomaly from an old prospector's journal. Numbers that didn't make sense, readings too rich for a dead zone on the map. Most people would have shrugged it off. But Rick? He followed the trail. A dried-out gulch, an overgrown skid road, a turn no GPS recognized, and then it appeared, half buried, half swallowed by the forest, a beast made of steel and time. A trommel rusted to the bones, sitting there like it had been frozen in place mid-roar. The size alone was insane. No small-time operator could have dragged that monster up here. The rollers were cracked. Vines had strangled the feed chute, and the belts had fused with mud and moss. But right there, where the hopper had busted open, it was spilling out. Gold, not flakes, not dust, chunks, blackened with age, but unmistakable. Gold that had just been sitting there, unclaimed, unprotected, worth more than anyone could count in a single glance. Rick dropped to his knees and scraped the surface. Nuggets poured out like gravel. Pure, untouched, raw value. And here's the part that made his blood run cold. There were no markings, no tags, no claim posts. It was like this thing had never existed, like someone had gone out of their way to erase it. He moved in closer. The frame, military grade, the undercarriage, custom reinforced. And the sluice box, 3-stage, overkill. This wasn't your everyday mining rig. This trommel had been built for one thing only: obliteration. Strip everything, catch everything, leave nothing behind. But it had failed, because what lay beneath it, still embedded in the gravel, was microscopic gold. Gold that early 90s tech would have missed, but today, worth millions. Whoever ran this machine had struck something big and then stopped. Walked away, no cleanup, no haul-off, just silence. Rick knew machines like this didn't just get left behind, they get hidden, covered up. So he called in help, mechanics, diggers, a soil analyst. The moment they popped open the main gearbox, it was like opening a coffin. Inside, sealed in wax paper and grease, was a faded logbook. Water damaged, barely readable, but one phrase was still legible, written in thick red grease pencil across the top. Yield maxed. Suspend operations vault remains closed. Vault? Rick pried further. Behind a collapsed hydraulic line, there was a sealed compartment, rusted shut. They cracked it open with a crowbar and a sledgehammer, and inside was no treasure, just paper. Rolled schematics, hand-drawn maps. Weird numbers, symbols, coordinates, all pinpointing other locations across the Yukon, Alaska, even British Columbia. And stamped across every single page, faded, but there, was one repeating phrase: ghost line. Suddenly, it wasn't about gold anymore. This wasn't just a machine, it was a trail marker, a message left behind by a crew that never returned. Rick didn't just find a trommel. He found a ghost rig, part of a system someone deliberately shut down. A network of untraceable machines built to tap something massive, then sealed away as if they were never meant to be found again. And now it's too late to bury it again. But mysteries this deep don't stay buried forever. When the past stirs, the present starts listening, and not everyone comes with good intentions. They thought they were just restoring a relic. But the moment gold began spilling out in streams too rich to ignore, everything changed. Word got out, not just among fans or locals, but among rivals. Silent observers started appearing at the edge of Rick's claim. Trucks parked off-grid, drones hovering too low, even trail cams mysteriously wiped clean. Someone was watching, and maybe someone wanted in, or worse, wanted it stopped. Rick didn't wait to find out. He rushed to bring the trommel into the 21st century. They mounted infrared sensors, GPS tracking, laser-guided sorting technology. What emerged wasn't just restored, it was reborn. A beast with iron bones and silicon nerves. The crew now called it the Hybrid. And it was no longer just a mining machine. It was bait, a fortress and a target all at once. But the deeper they dug, the more things stopped making sense. Records from the 1980s hinted that this entire site had once been a hotbed for gold extraction. And then, without warning, everything vanished. Permits revoked, gear abandoned, workers gone without trace. Whispers from retired miners painted a chilling picture: forced shutdowns, hushed bribes, and maybe even violence. This place hadn't just been forgotten, it had been erased. None of that stopped the Hybrid. In the first 48 hours of full operation, it pulled in gold that would make some junior mining companies blush. Nuggets the size of bullets, sheets like metallic tree bark, millions in raw value, practically spat out from rusted gears and decades-old designs. Word traveled fast, and this time, not even the skeptics could look away. Mining forums exploded. Industry insiders dismissed it as staged until video proof surfaced. Experts chimed in with hot takes. Impossible unless they struck a vein, or old tech can't beat optimized systems. But Rick's team didn't care about online noise. They were watching ounces become pounds. Every bucket told a story that no algorithm could deny. Suddenly, the narrative flipped. What if the industry had gotten it wrong? What if, in chasing automation and volume, they'd forgotten the raw efficiency of older builds? Machines designed not for scale, but for staying power. The Hybrid wasn't just defying expectations, it was embarrassing them. One machine, $1 million haul, and no corporate backing. Just elbow grease, old iron, and a man chasing shadows from the past. The ripple effects hit fast. Investors began revisiting decommissioned mines. Treasure hunters pulled up blueprints from archives no one had touched in 40 years. Even mainstream mining outfits started discreetly sourcing parts for pre-2000 equipment. But nothing matched the Hybrid trommel. Because Rick had something no one else did: the map. Not a treasure map, not exactly, but hand-sketched notes, old surveyor marks, and forgotten transit routes that hinted at more. Machines, tools, sites buried beneath moss, earth, and time. It wasn't just a gold rush, it was an arms race, and Rick had fired the first shot. By the time satellite drones were deployed over the region, the scale of what they were sitting on became clear. Fault lines rich in quartz, pockets previously dismissed by modern scanners now glowing with promise. The tech hadn't failed. It had never looked in the right place. And that's where the Hybrid's age became an asset. It didn't care about efficiency. It just chewed through ground like it was hungry. And in doing so, it found what precision missed. And then came the breakthrough. Using a new slurry technique, something Rick's mechanic had half-joked about during lunch, they tested a blend of magnetics and vibration filtration. The results? Staggering. What used to take a day now took an hour. Waste dropped. Yield spiked. The process was fast, clean, and replicable. But here's the kicker. The idea had come from a sketch found inside the trommel's control panel, dated 1973. A design never patented, never shared, buried and lost until now. Suddenly, the line between past and future blurred. They weren't modernizing a machine, they were resurrecting a forgotten science. Rick's team started referring to it as legacy engineering, a philosophy where rugged simplicity beat over-designed fragility, where function didn't depend on a software update, where humans worked with the machine, not for it. It wasn't just about making money anymore, it was about proving that the past had answers we stopped listening to. The hybrid was no longer a tool, it was a statement, and the ground beneath their boots was no longer dirt. It was history trying to speak. The deeper they went, the louder that message became. And someone, somewhere, was listening. News spread like wildfire. From remote corners of South America to the deserts of Australia, whispers turned into frantic research teams digging through archives, schematics, and long-lost company records. The gold rush had a new face, not a wild prospector or a billionaire tech CEO, but a rust-covered behemoth rescued from obscurity and brought back to life by sheer grit. Suddenly, every rusting relic buried in corporate scrapyards was worth re-examining. Mining giants who had dismissed the past as obsolete were now forming internal task forces to trace old gear, abandoned leases, and forgotten tunnels. The same dirt roads once deemed exhausted were reclassified as prospect zones. Governments that had long written off old claims saw their inboxes fill with fresh permit applications. And ghost towns? They weren't so ghostly anymore. Restaurants reopened, power grids flickered back on. Small supply chains saw sudden jolts of life. Mechanics and welders, once jobless, found themselves booked for months in advance. But something even stranger was happening. Environmental groups, who had historically stood against mining, were cautiously circling the TRL story. This wasn't invasive open-pit destruction. This was surgical, minimal waste, no dynamite, no crater-sized scars left behind. For the first time in decades, sustainability and mining were being spoken in the same sentence, and not as enemies. Meanwhile, the team wasn't done. Not even close. The restored TRL, once kept together by duct tape and luck, now ran like a symphony of power and precision. Engineers began integrating real-time tracking systems. Sensors were placed at critical joints. AI-assisted sorting arms were mounted to separate gold-bearing material with eerie accuracy. Every spin of the drum was logged, analyzed, and fed into a digital model that learned with each load. The result? The machine started finding pockets no one even knew existed. They weren't just operating it anymore, they were evolving it. And then, a revelation. As the team pored over decades-old geological maps, they noticed discrepancies, small notations that had been overlooked or dismissed. Areas once deemed unviable suddenly lined up with recent underground scans. It wasn't a fluke. The original builders of the TRL had tapped only a fraction of what was there. Whether they ran out of funding, permission, or patience was unclear. What was clear? The gold was still there, and now the technology was ready to get it. Each haul became larger than the last. Yields that used to be measured in ounces were now coming in by the pound. Every nugget pulled from the earth felt like a whisper from the past, a second chance. And yet, it didn't feel like a retrofit anymore. This wasn't just about reviving something old. This was something else entirely, something bigger. It was industrial resurrection, and it wasn't staying quiet. Other teams across the globe began following suit. From the icy expanses of Siberia to the rocky hills of Colorado, restoration became a movement. What started as a gamble on rusted metal was now a worldwide race. Entire facilities that had been gathering dust for decades were stripped, cleaned, rebuilt, and restarted. Mining conglomerates began noticing something deeply uncomfortable. the cost difference. A restored TRL, when enhanced with modern tech, could outperform millions of dollars worth of new equipment, and at a fraction of the operational cost. The data was undeniable. The restored machines consumed less energy, required fewer chemicals, and created smaller environmental footprints. That alone would have been enough to shift the industry. But what came next was something no one anticipated: identity crisis. What did it mean for a trillion-dollar sector when the cutting-edge tools were less effective than their 40-year-old predecessors? What did it say about the obsessive race for newer, faster, shinier, when the real answer was sitting half-buried in the mud all along? Suddenly, the industry wasn't looking forward. It was looking backward, not out of nostalgia, but necessity. Gold wasn't just being recovered, it was being redefined. In boardrooms, mining CEOs debated whether to greenlight new mega projects or invest in old site revival. Investors began pivoting portfolios toward retro engineering startups. Documentaries, academic papers, even government policy briefings began quoting the TRL case as a turning point. In a world obsessed with innovation, this machine became a monument to rediscovery, not because it was perfect, but because it dared to suggest the future doesn't always have to be brand new. And somewhere, in that still wild valley where it all started, the original TRL kept turning. Not just digging for gold, but unearthing something far rarer. Proof that forgotten power can rewrite the rules. That proof didn't go unnoticed. Engineers, analysts, and rivals began dissecting every second of the TRL's operation, trying to understand what made it work so flawlessly when billion-dollar rigs were falling short. The moment the trommel started pulling gold faster than any modern machine, something unexpected happened. It wasn't just the numbers that shook the industry, it was the method. Rick's machine was extracting more gold with far less waste than any contemporary mining rig. No open pits gouging the earth, no massive tailings dams threatening rivers. Just a mechanical beast, slowly eating through the soil and spitting out pure value, while leaving the landscape remarkably intact. This was mining's holy grail, profit and preservation in one machine. What once seemed impossible suddenly became the standard people hoped for. Media outlets, environmental groups, and investors scrambled to make sense of the anomaly. Some called it reckless optimism. Others hailed it as a new dawn for resource extraction. Behind the scenes, government agencies started paying attention. New regulations were drafted, focused not on limiting mining, but on encouraging restoration and reuse of existing sites and equipment. Incentives emerged to revive forgotten machines instead of tearing open virgin land. The balance between economic gain and ecological responsibility was shifting, driven by one man's discovery of a rusted relic buried in the wilderness. But the deeper the team dug, the more the earth beneath their feet began to whisper secrets. The gold flow wasn't consistent. Parts of the trommel would choke unexpectedly. Other sections would surge with more material than could be explained by natural deposit spread. Engineers scrambled to diagnose clogs, breakdowns, or sensor failures, but the irregularities persisted. Geologists were called in to analyze the patterns. What should have been straightforward vein deposits behaved like the work of an architect. Complex artificial channels wound through the bedrock, as if someone had carefully designed the veins for extraction, not natural formation. When underground imaging was deployed, the team discovered evidence that blew their minds. Hidden tunnels, narrow shafts, and chambers revealed themselves beneath layers of soil and rock that modern surveys had missed. These were not natural caves or erosion features. This was an engineered network, abandoned and buried long ago, its purpose obscured by time. Rick's mind raced. What had they stumbled upon? A lost mining operation centuries older than anyone suspected, or something more mysterious? Ancient miners, civilizations long forgotten, perhaps even predecessors who had moved mountains and shifted rivers to capture wealth we thought was just nature's gift. The questions piled up with no answers. But the TRL kept turning. The team pushed forward, uncovering another deposit twice as rich as the first. This new mother lode was wrapped in layers of sediment geologists called non-native formation, rocks that simply didn't belong there naturally. Gold was everywhere. But this was no accident. Someone had hidden it. Buried treasure, perhaps? Or a trap? A vault meant to be found only by those clever enough to unlock the past? As news of these discoveries reached the public, a frenzy ignited. The old gold rush had returned, but it was no longer about wild prospectors or risky new ventures. It was a global revival, a renaissance sparked by restoration, history, and the refusal to accept that newer always meant better. Towns that had long been silent woke up. Shops reopened. Mechanics worked overtime repairing gear that should have been junk decades ago. Investors poured money into startups that specialized in retrofitting, restoring, and upgrading the kind of equipment Rick had revived. What started as an isolated discovery became a worldwide movement. Mines across continents dusted off maps and rolled out rusting machines, retrofitting them with AI, sensors, and analytics. The term Old Tech Revival spread like wildfire, symbolizing a new philosophy. The future isn't just in innovation, it's in rediscovery. Meanwhile, the TRL, the original rusted giant, became a legend. Industry insiders debated its significance endlessly. How had this machine, seemingly obsolete, outperformed billion-dollar rigs? Was the industry's obsession with novelty blinding it to the value buried in its own past? The answer was clear. Efficiency, sustainability, and resilience lived in the wisdom of older designs combined with modern intelligence. The hybrid approach proved that the future of mining was not just machines of tomorrow, but machines of yesterday, reborn and enhanced. At the heart of it all, Rick's trommel became a symbol of lost knowledge, human persistence, and a delicate balance between exploitation and preservation. It had rewritten the ethical blueprint of mining. But beneath the triumphant headlines, the mystery deepened. The team's analyses revealed anomalies beneath the surface. Uneven gold flows, blocked chutes, and feed inconsistencies hinted at something bigger. Geologists speculated the trommel sat atop an expansive buried network. The gold veins might not be natural deposits, but part of a complex underground system. Perhaps a lost civilization's mine, or a forgotten industrial grid designed for maximum yield and secrecy. What they had was no longer just a mine. It was a puzzle. And puzzles can be dangerous, because such vast hidden networks come with risks, structural instability, unknown toxic residues, and even territorial disputes from rival parties who hadn't given up on controlling the secret veins. Rick's team faced choices that blurred the line between exploration and recklessness. They pressed on, driven by the lure of discovery, profit, and the possibility of rewriting history. With every bucket pulled from the earth, with every pound of gold recovered, the past and future collided. And as the rush grew global, governments, investors, and communities embraced the opportunity. Old mining lands were revitalized, new jobs created, and industries pivoted to embrace restoration over destruction. It was the birth of a new era, one where gold mining was no longer the reckless scar on the land, but a dance between technology, history, and respect. Rick Ness never expected his discovery to spark this revolution. But the rusted trommel, buried in dirt and vines, had done more than unearth gold. It had uncovered a blueprint for sustainable prosperity, a symbol of resilience, and a challenge to the very idea of progress. The future wasn't built. It was rediscovered. If you've been captivated by this journey, hit like, share this story, and comment below with your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe, because we're only just getting started unraveling the secrets of the past that could change everything.